Welcome back to the Lords of Lore podcast. I'm Matt.
And I'm Joe.
Joe, welcome back to the show. I think this is maybe the second or third time you've been on the main show?
Second time I've been on the main show.
Second time, okay. But like your fifth appearance on the channel.
Yeah, I know. I'm becoming a regular. I'm so excited.
Yeah. We got some fun things to talk about. I just want to mention right off the top of the show, we got some housekeeping things to address. We haven't put a show in a while. That's because our schedule has changed. We'll no longer be releasing weekly shows. We're moving to a bi-weekly format that's very up in the air and very casual. And the reason for that is one of the reasons Joe has joined the show today. It's because we started a new D&D group that plays on the same day we record this show. And so we've offset those two things. But we'll get into that a little bit later, a little tease for the people out there, talking about Joe's first experience with Dungeons and Dragons and all the insanity and hilarity that ensued in our first session. But before that, also want to mention it was our year anniversary yesterday.
Woo!
Yeah, we made it one whole year. We almost have an episode for every week. Definitely have hundreds of hours of content if that's your fancy, if you're watching this. So check all those out. And we're going to be finally doing the Dune book review as our 1 year anniversary episode. That'll be the next thing you see from this channel. So get hyped for that, I guess. But yeah, let's get into today's episode, Joe. So I wanted to talk to you about two things. Obviously, like we said before, playing D&D. But before that, I want to talk to you about collecting. So I know for all of us nerds, or most of the nerds I know, you have your obsession that lives in your head, and then you have these tchotchkes and collectibles that live in your house. Mm-hmm. So you have like the mental space your obsessions take up, as well as physical space. So I guess my first question for you is like, when did collecting become part of your fandom?
Oh man, it is a weird story. So I didn't collect anything when I was younger, up until I was, I want to say, 17-ish, I think.
Okay.
And it started because at that time I lived at home. My brother lived at home, and I had gotten this little Deadpool pop figure from a friend for my birthday, and I loved it. It was a little bobblehead. It just sat on like a shelf in my room. And then my brother from his girlfriend at the time bought him a little Batman pop head. And we used to joke about like, oh, we should get a fuck ton of these and just get like a bunch to collect. And then in the house we grew up in, we had two basement rooms. So one was technically my brother's basement room and one was mine, especially in the summer when it got too hot, we go sleep down there. Mm-hmm. But my room was like an old bed of his, like an old single he grew up sleeping in. So it was like a tiny little bed with nothing in that room. My guitar would sit in there, and then my really badly makeshift PC that I had like scrambled parts and pieces from friends to make.
Oh my god.
So my brother goes, well, we should turn that room into like an office or something, and then we should just set up both our PCs there, because my brother has his own PC too in his room. And he's like, and why don't we actually start buying some of these pops here and there? And I was like, yeah, sure, fuck it. I'll buy a pop once in a blue moon. And so the room had a perfect little ledge on the edge. So we just put our pops there, and these two little pops sat there for, I want to say, 6 months. And finally, my brother went and bought like a Joker pop, and I went and bought like a Spider-Man pop. And then like over time, it just kind of kept here and there. And then it got to the point where once my brother started dating his current fiance, she loved seeing all these little pops. So she started investing in our wall too.
Oh no.
And so our wall grew to about 215 pops over time.
Wow.
I have a good picture of like the ones we kept up. And then
send me that picture. I'll post it in the video here.
And then we cycle in groups of pops. So we have like a Batman corner and like an anime corner, and then like the Power Rangers lane and like all these other stuff. And then once my brother moved out, he took some of the pops, but he left the wall in there for the most part. And I kept adding to it by myself. And then once I moved out, I didn't have the room for it. So I have a few of my pops here in my apartment. But back at my parents' basement, there's just this huge wall of pops. So that
You're just going to come home and they're going to be having a garage sale.
They keep telling me that if they're ever broke, they're just going to sell all my pops. But
pops are actually an interesting thing. so we can tangent here,
Okay.
because I have sort of like a love-hate relationship with Pops. Um, you know, I love Pops for the reason that, like, if you're a fan of something like super obscure
Yeah.
or not well known or well appreciated enough to have its own merch lines, or
Yeah.
get its Hasbro series of figures and all that stuff, um it kind of sucks because you gotta like scrounge and get like keychains, and it's not the same.
Smallest
you
little
know
accessories you can find.
yeah. Or you buy like for me, like it was like I bought a bunch of art prints, and it
Nice.
got to the point where like I have no more wall space and it looks tacky.
Yeah.
I can't keep putting up 8x10s.
All these prints.
Yeah, so I like Funko Pops because they're like this really cool phenomenon where anything you love, there's
Yeah,
probably a pop of it.
exactly.
uh and that's super fucking cool. So everyone who loves something can have a bobblehead sort of figure of it.
Exactly.
But
Oh,
I also hate it for the exact same reason that, like, I don't, the actual like aesthetic of a pop I think is fine,
yeah.
but it's sort of like the way of like Beanie Babies for me,
Yeah.
where like it's become like this, like they're everywhere,
Oh,
and
yeah.
like the exclusivity of it sort of, like, I feel like there's a people have like individual connections with the pops they own, like you
Yeah,
and your brother. It was like this communal thing for you guys,
exactly.
and all those characters like you obviously like enough to get.
Hmm.
But at the same time, like when I go into a store and I see a wall of pops, I don't even look at it.
Yeah, yeah,
Like, I'm just so like, maybe it's like fatigue with it.
yeah,
Like, how
definitely.
long can they keep doing this? And I think the answer is a long time, because like there's always going to be properties that people want to see adapted into this format. But it's kind of like a weird thing for me where I'm like, I don't buy pops anymore.
Yeah,
Um, because like I started buying Star Wars ones and then quickly was like, I this is not I cannot sustain this.
yeah, yeah. It's gonna keep expanding.
Exactly.
I think that's the problem with pop collection now. Some people have gone very um, overboard with it. And don't get me
Mhm.
wrong, I went overboard with it. But it was mostly due to the love of seeing something and not wanting to have something too crazy or huge. Like I didn't want to buy
Right.
a big statue of all the Power Rangers or anything, or like have this huge poster or whatever. I just wanted to have this cute little thing that like I grew up with the Power Rangers, and I'll buy the little Power Rangers and just like enjoy the fact that I have this little reference to them.
Yeah.
And I think that was me and my brother's love for pops, at least, was like there's a lot of properties we love, but we don't want to go all out for them. So we
Yeah.
just have like a little reference to them at home. And it's this cute little chibi thing. So it's like it's always gonna be cute, but it was never like I need to have all the collection. I need to have like every number in this line or whatever. It was just because we like certain things, or we stumble onto them and be like, oh fuck, okay, yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So honestly, on the opposite note, I don't buy pops a lot anymore. But I'm like a child at a candy store. Whenever I see a pop wall, I'll
Yeah. Okay.
really walk up to it and I just give it like a brief look. If there's anything I like, I'll take it out. I'll take a peek at it. I'll contemplate if it's worth it, and if it's not, I'll put it back. And if it is, I'll buy it. But I
Yeah.
mean, it's like $15 usually. So usually, since I don't buy them all the time, it's not that
Yeah.
bad to spend. But
That's the thing too, right? It's like, if you went out and bought like the premium sort of
yeah,
uh diorama sort of display pieces that usually come with some of the bigger IPs, like the anime ones and all that stuff, you're looking at like spending $300,
exactly.
which sort of, we'll get back to that point in a second, but a pop being $15, like 10 to $15, depending on where you get it, it's so much
Yeah,
cheaper, and you
yeah,
can have the thing, you can have a physical representation of your fandom there on
exactly.
your desk or whatever it is. So it's really cool. And again, I love them because it gives everybody an access point to collecting. i
Exactly.
just I'm just like tired of seeing them.
Yeah, it's like the entry drug of collecting.
Yes. Yeah.
Everyone will be like, I found a Fallout pop. I love Fallout pop. And then you
Yeah.
slowly buy a few Fallout pops, and then you go, oh, that's a Big Daddy from BioWare. I'm gonna get that. And it just becomes a habit over time. But there's definitely, I think, better collections you can have. But I think everyone who enjoys their IPs and wants to like celebrate them, it's a good foot start for them if they want to
Yeah.
collect little things that they enjoy. Plus, I think the community for pops has gone to a point where they like, even if you don't want to buy like just generic pop, you can find so many places that make custom pops. Like I've
Right.
seen couples that have gotten pops of themselves, and I think that's
Yeah.
awesome because they're custom made. Or like, oh, this part happened in the manga but not in the show yet, so I got this custom pop that was made before it even comes out. And it's like, okay,
Yeah.
cool, and good for you, that's sick.
Yeah, that's cool. So your fandom like your collecting, sorry, I should say,
Yeah,
started with pops.
yeah.
Has it expanded at all into other collections?
Oh man, hold on, let me look back. No, I definitely went down the figure route over time. So
Okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
um, around like, I want to say a year or two after we got the pop started, my brother bought me like this little Halo figure, and it's back when I was super into Halo playing it. And then I just kept finding them everywhere I went. So whenever I found a new one I didn't own, I bought those like these action figures and just standing them up. And then it
Yeah.
became like, oh, well, these are cool statues of anime characters. So it became a statue thing over time. And
Yeah.
then I slowly kind of dipped my toes into Gundam building and having those little model statues. I don't even
Yep.
watch Gundam a whole lot, but like I love the experience of building it and then being able to show off something you build.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I also have a ton. So that's interesting that, again, Funko being the gateway drug thing you're
Yep.
collecting. Um, I have like I guess pretty similar. My collecting started when I was a kid, just with action figures,
Yeah.
but I was never really like collecting.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I would never try to get all of an action figure line. Like there were some Power Rangers. I was like,
Yeah.
okay, I need the blue one and the red one and the yellow one or whatever the case. But I remember like Star Wars for me obviously was the very first like collect them thing. And it
Yeah.
wasn't always even like the action figures. It was like I remember like when Revenge of the Sith was coming out and I was obsessed with Star Wars. It was like there was an M&M's had Star Wars characters on the front, like just shitty JPEGs of
Yep.
like Mace Windu.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
And I had to get them all. And I kept them like in a drawer in my room for like
That's great.
probably like 5 years, I'm gonna say, until like we moved and I was like, why do I have a
Shit.
bunch of old M&M packages? I remember one time I was on vacation and I got one with like a family friend and they threw it out like in the
Oh,
garbage. And I was like, what have you done? And I tore through the garbage, like
oh
three
no.
different bags of garbage to find I think it was like Anakin on like a peanut M&M's. And I was so like elated when I found it. But
That's so funny.
then I just ended up throwing them all out. I don't know. Star Wars has very much that
Yeah.
uh around it of just like weird collect. Like I
Oh yeah.
remember in for Phantom Menace there was like weird Pepsi cans,
Yeah.
and people collected those. So there's been all these things, which have led me to where I am now, where some people who watch the show may know, but for people who don't, I'm a maker. Like I paint miniatures, I do dioramas, I make scenery, I paint all the minis for Dungeons and Dragons, all the terrain, Warhammer, stuff like that. Very much my thing, and I do a lot of prop replication too. So, most recently I did the Chris Knights from Dune,
Nice.
3D print them, paint them. But that all started again from Star Wars. My mom, like I was a grown adult, probably like, 2015. So I don't know,
21, 22.
yeah, 20-ish,
Yeah.
20 or 19, 20-ish. And um I got my mom went to the Disney store when she was on vacation to get things for my nephew.
Yeah.
And she brought me back a Finn action figure because she knew I love Star Wars.
Nice.
And I was like, Mom, like I'm 20. What am I gonna do with this action figure? Which, like, for you hearing that, Joe, you're probably like you've seen my basement.
Yeah.
You've seen
Yeah.
like, but at that time, it
Yeah.
wasn't anything like that. I didn't have a single action figure on display, but I had this action figure, and it was Finn in his stormtrooper, just plain stormtrooper armor. And if you could take off his helmet,
Hey.
and it was his face underneath. And so I was like, I don't really like just the stormtrooper, but he looks a little goofy with his helmet on.
Yeah.
So I was like, I have some acrylic paints lying around. I'll just like paint the three sort of blood streaks that go across his helmet in the opening. and sort of have that scene as like a little
Yeah.
diorama of him holding the helmet, seeing the blood streaks.
Sick. I love that.
So that was the first one I ever did. I'll post a picture in here. And I just started with the blood streaks. I just put the blood streaks on his helmet. And I was like, wouldn't it be cool if he was looking at the helmets? Then I painted his face. Very awful paint job. And then, on the base that he stands on, I was like, I'll just get some school glue and throw some sand from the playground across the street on there. And that sat on my bookshelf for like, a couple months. I loved it. I was like, that was such a fun process. And then I started buying Star Wars action figures, Black Series or Elite Series from Disney Store, and started like customizing them, making them look more like how they do in the scenes that they come from in the movies. Eventually, that sort of path led me to like things like Gundam or Gunpla, I should say, and then making dioramas out of those. And eventually, I was building terrain because that was the most fun. Like I built a Gunpla diorama, but I had more fun doing like the scenery opposed to the actual Gundams. And
it's to life though, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like there, and it's like, okay, this looks great, but when you can give it a area to surround it with, you're like, now it's actually there,
because you know what it is. It's sort of like we were talking about with Funko Pops. Like you have a physical manifestation of the thing you love. So like you connect, if you have a Captain America one, you might connect it to specific moments in the film and be like, when you look at it, you can think of like 20 different things about that character and just go to a different place for a second. So for me, making these like scenes opposed to just like figures was like, oh, I can capture the scene from a moment in this for Gundam. It was like this 1979 anime that I love. I can have that. And that's very rare to find just like out in the world. If it's not a very popular IP, it's hard to find stuff like that. So to be able to make it, I was like, man, this is hitting, like, it's hitting all these things for me. And then, I was building all this terrain and was like, I need something to actually do this for, because I feel like I'm just doing this to do it. So, I hit up one of my friends and was like, let's play Warhammer. And, we went back and forth with that. And then eventually it was like, okay, let's play D&D. And then that became a whole another obsession. That became, how do I make these minis myself? Where do I get them? What board games can I buy to get the most miniatures? I should buy a 3D printer. I should start 3D printing things. And so now my collection consists mostly of things I've made myself. But I wanted to talk a little bit about like props and stuff. So do you own any like props from things?
No, not necessarily. I feel like I somewhere do, but like that can come to my mind right at the moment. No, like I love like little knickknacks I can collect from places. Like even when they did like the stone, or what am I saying? Jesus, the clone trooper glasses that were 3D for like Star Wars. I remember I have one in my parents' house because I remember being like, this is sick. I'm not but like I don't have any like direct props or anything, but usually like little memorabilia of something or experience I had. So unfortunately I don't keep too much stuff, especially with my apartment. I don't have the room for it anymore.
I think like I guess for me, like the difference, like we were talking about, like there's a scene in a movie, I can make that scene in a physical form. But I think like having a prop is also like there's nothing like holding a lightsaber. Because even if it's one without like a blade, like I am immediately like fucking 8 years old again. And
now you're reminding me. I do have 2 lightsabers at my parents' house. When I went to Disney World and we went to create your own lightsabers.
Oh, sick.
My brother made a blue one and I made a red one. My brother has this old funny video of us fighting on like a carousel in Disneyland for lightsabers. But like that's probably like one of the big things I have, if not like tiny little ones. But
it's just something about being able to pick up a part of a universe opposed to like seeing it. It's just like, I don't know, for some reason, like that really gets it for me. And then like things like cosplay and all that stuff. So I guess my next question for you is like, what is it about owning like those figures in your case that really like scratches that itch for you, for lack of a better term?
Oh man, it's something about kind of being able to turn and be like, yeah, that was a good fucking episode. Or man, this character is so fucking good. Like it's reliving the moment, right? Because you can always enjoy a moment, but you're not going to sit there and pull up the scene or the action set or whatever like of that moment all the time to enjoy it and try to
Right.
remember it. Like, and sometimes you will go back like, let me watch that scene, right? But then something about having like, yeah, a little figure that just like, yeah, good memory right there. Or like
Yeah.
even having some that like come from different places. Like I have a Nightwing pop that came from Ocala, Florida. And I remember when I was with my brother in Florida, we were like, let's go buy pop figures just because we can. And I did. And I went and I saw that Nightwing one that I'd never seen. I was like, fuck, this is sick. And now every time I see it, I think about Batman because I love the IP, but
Right.
also that trip to Florida I have with my brother. So it's like something
Okay.
that always rings.
Oh, so it's hitting like two different fronts of like your own memories, but also
Exactly,
memories
right? I can
from.
enjoy the character, but I can also enjoy an experience in life. And I think that's where I've gone to with my collecting now is I usually collect pop figures or buy them when I'm on vacation because it like
Oh wow.
brings sentiment to that pop figure as
Right,
well.
right, right.
Yeah, but I don't know. I love having them. Like I have a Hybrid Theory one, and it's sick. It's just like the cover of yeah, like the Hybrid Theory cover, but it's done in pop format. But the box is huge, so it has the full background of the cover for Hybrid Theory. It's the Linkin Park album.
Right, right, right.
It's
That's what I
got
thought.
the
Yeah.
soldier with the flag and the wings, and it's just a pop figure,
Oh,
and I love it.
that is so cool. I didn't
Yeah,
know
I'll
they did stuff
send you
like
a
that.
picture.
Man, that's awesome.
Yeah, I love
Uh
that. So that's
yeah, no, that is way more up my alley where it's like again, it's like a moment in time sort of captured within
exactly.
like a diorama or something like that. Yeah, that's really cool. Are there any like big items on your collector's list that you're like, I have to get that within my
Oh,
lifetime?
Sasuke's sword,
Uh-huh.
a Keyblade from Kingdom Hearts.
Uh-huh.
I have some kunai already, I believe, somewhere
Yeah.
laying around. That's the prop I have. I totally
Right,
forgot
right, right.
about. What's another big one I want to get? Oh man, you're like making me search everything right now. I'm like, oh, what do I want that's huge? Because like,
I know
yeah,
some of a
like I like
Sasuke
having
sword.
something small, right? Because I,
Yeah.
I I don't have the room for anything big, but there's part of me that like, fuck it, I just want to pull out Keyblade,
Yeah.
right? But those two are definitely like the biggest things for me. I've wanted a Keyblade forever. And then my friend actually got a Sasuke sword when we were at Comic Con, and
Mhm.
I forever been jealous of him. So now
Yeah.
I want my own.
Yeah, my buddy has one as well. But the Keyblade is a really cool one too because it's such like an iconic design.
Yeah,
I
it's just
remember like um I guess part of my collecting experience too was like my dad when I was younger used to make me swords out of wood
yeah,
and they would be like highly fucking detailed.
that's
Like I
sick.
had a wooden master sword, all one solid piece.
Nice.
And it was the coolest thing. I eventually wrecked it, but
Yeah,
it was, one of the coolest things I owned. I had like Legolas's knives. I had an Urukai sort of cleaver.
yeah, yeah,
Super cool stuff. But I think now like there is this like I think it's called like the Master Replica Master Sword.
yeah.
It's completely metal, like it's a legitimate sword, and it's beautiful. And I think it's like $2,000 or something.
Jesus.
And I'm like, man, if I ever hit it big,
Yeah.
like
Oh yeah,
that's going to be one of the first things I buy
that'd be sick,
just
dude.
to have it.
No, there's this guy on YouTube I watch. His name escapes me at the moment, but he handcrafts swords and like all kinds of weapons. And he went through and did every sword from Demon Slayer because every
Oh,
like
are these is it like that team of guys like they're forgers?
yeah, like one's a forger and Larry was his like younger brother or something. At least the guys I watch.
Okay.
But, yeah, like he just does all by hand.
Man at Arms, is it that show?
No, it's not Man at Arms, but I do
Okay.
love their stuff. But this
Yeah,
guy
yeah,
has like own his own like home base type thing.
Okay, okay,
And
gotcha.
him and his brother like cut tatami mats at the end with all their shit in
Yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah.
But he went and made all the Hashira swords, which are like the big demon slayers. And there's one guy who's like the Wind Demon Slayer, and he's got this sick green sword, and his blade stop is like a shuriken base. It looks sick, and I want it so bad. And he posted that he plans on selling them, but he wants to go back and refine all the swords before
Yeah.
he does. So he said hopefully in the next year he'll start selling them. And I'm waiting for it. The day he says he's going to sell them, I'm buying that shit.
Yeah.
I don't care how much.
That's awesome. Yeah, I used to be a sucker for like the Man at Arms videos.
Oh man, I think everyone was. That's
Yeah.
so intricate. They're building and it's so well done by the end. Oh,
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, I just love like watching that whole process start to finish. Just
Yeah,
being
yeah.
like, man, could I do that?
Right. Man, if I had the time to get
Yeah,
into forging, I would. I would love to just make my own random shit here at home.
yeah. Uh, but yeah, um, so yeah, we love collecting. I guess that's the bottom line. I don't know if there was a introspective look at it. I just wanted to talk about it.
Hey, here's my introspective look at it. Branding has gotten us into collecting, where it was through unique papers, unique wrappers. I think my first footstone, I guess I could say, into collecting, like in the earliest memory I can have of actually collecting something, was collecting the Beast Wars Transformer toys from McDonald's when I was like
Ooh,
6 or 7.
yes,
That
man, I
was
love
my
Beast Wars.
shit.
Man, you
I've
know
loved
what?
Transformers since.
Speaking of Beast Wars, because that show kicked ass.
Yes.
It was bizarre.
Oh yeah.
Like to think of it now, like the
It.
Transformers crash land on like a prehistoric Earth and turn into dinosaurs.
Yep.
And but they actually remade Beast Wars action figures
Yep.
probably like 4 or 5 years ago, and they're sick.
They look dope. My friend collects all of them.
Oh man,
Yeah,
as soon as I saw them like
beautiful.
unlock the core memory, especially like the Megatron one.
Yep, yep. The
So
Optimus
sick.
Prime as the ape. Hell
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So good. Yeah, Beast Wars were very, very cool. I remember
That's
those
like
McDonald's toys too.
earliest I can remember being like, I want to have all of these little toys.
Oh,
I made my parents go to McDonald's so many times just to get Optimus Prime as an ape, like 5
yeah.
times.
Yeah, actually, now that you say it, I think maybe the first collecting I ever did was Bionicles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good shit right there.
Yeah.
I had a few of the first generation and maybe like 2 of the third generation, but I definitely had some Bionicles. Man, I just like all these repressed memories are coming back.
yeah.
All my nerd. I'm like, I did collect shit. I just didn't know it back then.
Yeah, I think no, you're spot on though. It's like it is a very capitalistic thing, but you know, two things can be true at the same time.
Yeah.
Like these things can be important and like sort of identity of like defining for us, you know, our love of certain IPs while also being a capitalist venture and you know, probably not great overall, you know, the byproducts of such things, but you know, that doesn't mean we shouldn't enjoy our love of artistic endeavors, you know what I mean? So but yeah, so speaking of, you know, my transition from you know, going into like building terrain for diorama purposes and now building it for game purposes, you got to experience that, I'll say, albeit in a very, very small format. The you know, the encounter that we actually got into in your first game was you know, pretty barren. So that'll change. Don't worry. I've been working on some stuff.
Ready, man.
But I want to know, before we played your first D&D game, what was sort of like your understanding or like cultural knowledge of D&D before I asked you to play?
Well, I knew with D&D, like your campaigns extend long periods of time, and based on your character's actions, you can have like your team split up, or people can die, and it can lead to, you know, splitting of the group. But I didn't know how in depth it got, like with the actual like what moves you make and what choices you make. I thought it was kind of like, okay, I'm going to do this. Okay, roll a dice. Okay, go. I'm going to say this. Okay, and I figured it was mostly combat that used the die to actually make moves and like determine how good you are. Seeing it firsthand, seeing like, oh, I can do this for almost anything I want. Like,
yeah.
Okay, am I smart? Can I do this? Will my guy actually die from this? Will he be fine if I just get fucked up here?
Yeah.
And I think the funniest part about it is I didn't know how in depth people go with their characters. And I've seen like, you know, media representations of it, and I feel like D&D in media is usually frowned upon. Weirdly enough, I feel like it's very, unless you're in the D&D scene or you know of it, most people kind of joke at it. They're like, "Oh, they're D&D players over there, or the nerds in their basement and stuff," right? It's like I've never thought of it like that, but I've never given it a chance myself. But actually seeing it firsthand and enjoying the experience of being able to act as my character, that was pretty fun. I didn't think I was going to do anything too crazy. And then I'm not even kidding, like what, 3 minutes in, I was being all weird as my character.
Yeah. It was honestly like from the DM perspective, I was running the game. From the DM perspective, it's so like refreshing, and it sort of like revives my love of the game.
Yeah.
When you get new people at the table, just in general, when you have your group and then you inject like a guest appearance or something like that. Not a guest appearance, but that's usually what we would call it in my game. If someone shows up just to try it out, right?
Yeah.
But it's just like a breath of fresh air because it's like, oh, new backstory.
Yeah.
Like you can play with this immediately. Whereas like some of the other characters in the campaign, their backstories are sort of, it's a slow build because you want to make it like fulfilling over the whole campaign type of thing. But so anytime a new player comes to the table, I'm like reinvigorated. But starting a new campaign with new players is something that can either go really, really poorly, or in the case like that we did last Thursday, really well. And it was so like refreshing to see you like come to the table, and you know, when you're playing with a group of people who for the most part you don't know that well. Like it's sort of weird for me because at the D&D table I'm always sort of the person who knows everybody. Like I've put the group together because I've convinced all my sort of nerdy friends to come and be very nerdy with me. And so in those instances it's sort of like I have to be the icebreaker, sort of, you know, mediator between all these people who want to meet each other and make a good first impression, but also want to play a fucking balls to the wall character. And it's like, well, I don't want these people to think I'm crazy. I just want them to think my character is crazy. But you know, so that's always hard to balance. But you came in, you know, as nice as you always are as a human being, but as a character, just so to a T what your character was when we talked about it beforehand. And it was just so refreshing to see like a new player to really be like, oh, I'm going for it, you know? And it's 50-50. Sometimes you get like people who, you know, want to learn the rules first and like they're like, you know, very vague with their character descriptions. And I remember like in the planning process, you were like, my guy is a this and he's going to be like this. And I was like, I fucking love that.
No, I remember when we had that planning process, like even when we were talking about it before, when you were kind of giving us a description of the world and whatnot, like the entire time I was thinking, like, what can I bring that'll be unique but fun for everyone? And even if they're not like directly interacting with me, they can look at me and watch me and be like, what the hell is going on? And I thought for me it'd be entertaining to do, but it'd be entertaining for the people around me as well. And I was like, let's just go with something weird and balls to the wall, like out there. I love my character and I've been having a lot of fun with him.
So for the people who are listening who probably want to know more about this character, we'll keep it vague enough so that if other players of our game are watching this, they don't get any spoilers or anything. But yeah, you picked a character who is very unsure of the world around them because they have like a sort of psychosis based off these magical experiments they've been doing on themselves to make themselves stronger, that your perception of reality is very altered and questionable at best. And you know, you play someone who hears voices in their head in a comical way. Like, you know, obviously like that can be a very heavy thing to tackle, but you do it in such a way where it's like you're having these comedic conversations with someone who's not at the table, and then sometimes I get to jump in and be that voice. And you know, we explain none of this to the other people at the table. And so they just see you talking to yourself and they're like, yo, is this guy all right?
I think my favorite part, because you've been doing awesome, and like I wasn't sure how to go and do that initially by myself. But I think one of the first interactions was you just leaned over to me and you're like, you hear someone say blah blah, and I immediately like turned to my corner and started talking to myself. And the other guys at our table were already in the midst of a conversation. And they just all looked at me like, what the hell is going on? It's perfect because I was sitting right next to you, so they didn't even tell me that, but it was hilarious. And honestly, like playing into it has just been so fun, honestly.
So now that you've played like your first game and you have like such a distinct character, has your perception of D&D changed now that you've done it for a first time? Like, what were the biggest differences from what you thought going in and what you know now?
Yeah, I mean, we first all sat down, like you said, I didn't really know the guys too well. We all had like a brief introduction of how we're going to start the night, or like each other, and then we started. And I'm thankful for you starting on me and kind of
Yeah.
able to kind of get into the world as my character, because I didn't know how it was going to pan out. And then you had everyone kind of already in their places, which was nice. And I kind of got introduced as like this random character coming in short or last before everyone. And I kind of played it very down at first with my character's voice. And then it wasn't until I heard one of our other guys like very heavily lean into his voice, like
Yeah.
his character. And I was like, okay, I have
Yeah.
no shame here.
That was very intentional too, because I knew like the other guys, besides Matt, other Matt for people who watch the show, but Luca and our friend Ashish, like I've played D&D with them before. So I know they know how to play. And I know Matt's played a lot of D&D. So I was like, I think the best person to start the game on is you, to give you some like, direction on how to get things done. So, okay, we see your character walk into the thing and what do you do? And you're sort of like, I don't know, what can I do? And I'm like, anything. What do you, and you're like, I'll talk to the guy. And then just going from there, where you're sort of flung into this
Yeah.
experience, and then everybody gets to sort of watch you come through and learn a little tiny bit about your character, and then everyone sort of comes together. And I think the voices is one thing that's really fun with D&D. Obviously, just being able to take your character to that next level.
Yeah.
Not always like an accent, but just like what you do with your character is like very nasally, very like
Very
creepy.
sounding
Yeah.
weirdo. But
Yeah.
and that's the thing, like I didn't know initially how I was going to make my guy sound. And it felt nice because right when we got into that experience, that was the first time I genuinely gave my character a voice and thought of how he's going to sound.
Mhm.
And I thought of it on the spot, but it like felt perfect to me. Like as soon as I got into
Yeah. Yeah.
like yeah, that's my character. Like I
I
thought like
love
this is
that.
my character completely different.
Yeah.
And
And it's funny too, because like to your credit, like to see the body language shift of when you're just being Joe and being like, how does this work and what, and then when you switch to your character,
my chair
it's
leaned forward.
yeah. Yeah, it's so cool to watch like that transition happen in real time. And I think like for me, that's really the beauty of D&D, to be
Yeah.
like, you can be very silly with it, you can be very serious with it, like some of our other characters are. But at the end of the day, once you come out of those scenes or like those interactions, it's just a group of us having fun at the table.
Yeah.
And there were moments in our game where like very ridiculous shit was happening. Like
Yes.
one character pulled out magic mushrooms that he takes on a regular basis to hallucinate, and you were like, if I wanted to do drugs, I'd bring my own, and I did. You pulled out.
I think the way that one worked was so perfect because I didn't know what I was gonna say initially, but I was like, how can I do my own character with this? And I was like, my character would probably be like disgusted at someone else's drugs, but I'm like, but also at the same point, my character would probably be doing his own drugs too because he's so fucking weird. So I took a perfect pause. I feel like because I was like, if I wanted to do someone else's drugs, I would have brought my own. And I stopped, and everyone kind of like stopped and was about to go back to their own like whatever they were doing. I'm like, which I did, and I pull like a big bag, and everyone stopped and just burst out laughing.
Yeah, I think like bringing that, like your character being like a very antisocial weirdo,
Yeah.
And then bringing the comedy to that, so it's not as serious as it could be. It like really, makes the game like fun. And then to see all those characters sort of interact, and everyone's like finds their character as the session goes on, and then gets to a point where like the interactions feel like now we've found some sort of rapport within the group.
Yeah.
Again, it's super cool to see those things in real time.
Yeah.
So what are some other feelings you had about playing the game? Like I know like you said going into it, things are like campaign based, and like there's dice involved. What did you think about the actual mechanics of the game?
Yeah, I thought like at first I there was a few parts where I didn't really say much because I didn't know how to play my character, and at the same point I didn't want to intrude on someone else doing their own part. And I feel like next round we go, I'll probably try to be more um, able to jump in, I guess, because there's a few points where I was just like I want to kind of learn and listen at the same time and see how this interaction goes down to see what I'm able to do in the future. So it was mostly a learning session for me too because um, you guys were you and our other guy who was there were awesome because I could just lean to you guys and be like, hey, can I do this or what
Yeah,
here? And thank God you guys are all really nice. Like, our guy, she would like look over and be like, yeah, you can do that. So that should work if you do that here. I'm like, okay, cool. And then I'd like to be like, okay, I do this.
yeah.
But like learning how like your dexterity and all your different stats can be applied, and also seeing the bad side of all the dice rolls
Yeah.
really kept it interesting for me and let me learn how far you can push your character and how much you should try on something versus how little you should try on something if you know you can't do it.
Yeah.
But it was hilarious. I think the experience was great, and I think the best, most satisfying part for me at least was sitting down with these guys and being my weird character and watching their characters react and be like, this guy's fucking weird. What's going on with him?
Yeah.
And then when we finished at the table and we were all like, okay, that'll call it there, was the guy or guys going, your character's hilarious. I love that.
Yeah.
That's kind of like complete opposite from their character in game, but
Right.
it's awesome to like have that payoff of like, in a world with this character, these people be like, what the hell is this guy doing? But then their outside perspective being like, I fucking love it. Like it was great. It was such a
That's the thing. I think that's the really cool thing about D&D for me is because we're all such big fans of fantasy and sci-fi and anime and stuff like that, comic books, we all appreciate good characters that exist in those settings, right?
Yeah.
So but then as part of D&D is you actually have to play those characters. So,
exactly.
I know that I'm the big gruff guy who would think your character's weird.
Yeah.
So I have to play that. But I can also like, it's like an out of body experience where I'm like, oh man, this is so good. This interaction we're having, even if my guy's like super angry or whatever the case, you know what I mean? And as the DM, it's super fun to just, put you guys in a situation and just sort of lean back and watch things unfold and see how you guys interact with each other. And then someone will try something and then you all just look at me like, go ahead and roll to do drugs.
Oh man, that was so good. I think the beauty of it is everyone gets to play their own character, but in their mind is the main character of this story. Right? Whatever story you're doing, you are your main character. But then the beauty of any plot is the side characters. How do they interact with that main character? And for them, as a main character, like, what the hell's going on over there?
Yeah.
This guy's weird. But then me and my main character story is like, no, I can't. Like being my weird character and being like, no, I can't trust these guys. No.
Yeah.
And being like the retrospect being like, they bring a good dynamic to my character, even if it's really off. But yeah, it's like, I don't know, the beauty of being your own main character, but being someone else's side character, and make your story interesting, but also bringing their story interesting and how they affect you and whatnot. But I love that. I love the beauty of the back and forth of main character and side character.
Yeah. Being the forefront in your own story, but then also being like, oh, I have to contribute to that person's arc in a way. And just being like this great ensemble thing. Where and especially like I think having the backstory is like such a cool aspect to that too, because only you and I know what's really happening for your character, and everybody else sort of has to figure out that mystery. And in some aspects, like even I know more than you do. And you're trying to figure it out too, right? And then I'm playing off of you and trying to figure out like where would Joe like to see this character go and what can I do to subvert that but also make it fulfilling, or like you know what I mean? So much fun.
I can say I feel very lucky to say that as a friend I have you, but also you are very talented in the way you think with your storytelling and everything. And that's why one part of my character was like, let's let it kind of be up in the air, because I want to experience my character as me, but I don't want to know every little detail.
Yeah.
Kind of enjoy learning about my character as well. So I'm lucky that you, as a DM, have such a creative mind that you can kind of help me experiment with that. And so far, fucking great. But I can't wait to see what else you do.
Yeah. Oh, I appreciate that a lot, man. I think you hit on a very, very important part of building a character in D&D, because a lot of people, you want to play like as your favorite, pop culture character for a
Yeah,
lot of people, right? Or say you're playing a monk, you're like, oh, I want to be Naruto.
yeah,
But to have a fulfilling D&D experience, in my opinion, you have to start at episode 1 of Naruto.
yeah,
Like that's your character. So you get the tragic backstory of, you're an orphan and nobody around your village likes you and you want to be a ninja. That's got to be like, you
yeah.
can't start at the beginning of Shippuden or at the end of it, or, you can't be like a powerful person with their life figured out
Yeah, exactly.
already.
Yeah, it doesn't work that way. That's not
Yeah,
good.
or else there's nowhere really for me as the DM to sort of take you
Exactly.
besides, doing things like breaking your character. Like if you have ultra success and your character has everything they could ever want and they have as much power as they need and whatever,
Yeah,
there's nothing I could do but take away or
exactly.
insert something that disrupts that, balance. And that's tougher to do because as a player, like in a game like D&D, your agency is like your biggest asset, the
Yeah,
fact that you can do anything. So when the DM sort of taking, decisions or opportunities away from you,
yeah,
that becomes like a very awkward and sort of adversarial part of the game
yeah,
that's like I
exactly.
don't really enjoy as much. But
And
when you start from like this awful thing happened to me and I'm looking for the people who did it, or
yeah,
I don't remember what happened to me, I just showed up and I'm fucked up.
I'm
It's
just
like my mind just the clockwork, like starts going like all of these sort of threads where we can take this and like change it or like make it like super dark or super light or like whatever
yeah,
the case may be. That's where like the fun and the improv comes from.
exactly. And like, I don't know, I wanted my character at least to be fun for me, fun for you, but fun for anyone in our group to also
Yeah.
like, even if they're not firsthand doing what I'm doing or helping me necessarily, they can sit back and watch this shenanigans and still enjoy it from a distance, right?
Yeah.
It's fun regardless of who's involved. And I feel like if I were to like, step into a position where it's like, oh, I know my character is good and they got all this shit, like, they're exactly what you said. You can only take away at that point. And for you as a DM, that would suck too, because you don't want to make your friend's character shitty. You want them to
Yeah.
be a character, right? But
Like it could also be a cool backstory that,
yeah,
at one point you had everything and then you lost it.
and then
But
you
we
lost
have to start from you lost it. We
it.
can't
Yeah,
start from I have everything I want
exactly.
and I'm
No,
really cool.
no, but I wanted that like fresh experience of like, just give me some weird shit to work with and we'll go from
Yeah.
there. And like that, it's also my way of learning as well, because I can see how the story works with my character and how you go with stories, and then what I can kind of push my character to do, not even knowing what I can do to begin
Yeah.
with. So I think it's pretty fun for me to come into this world that you've built and feel very fresh and new to it, but experiment like my
Yeah.
character does. So it works really well in my scene at least. But
Yeah.
yeah, I
It's
love it.
very cool to like um there's a sort of phenomenon in being a dungeon master, which is a bad one, unfortunately. They call it precious setting syndrome. So
Oh,
you've created this world and everything is exactly how you want it in your head,
yeah.
but now you have to insert your players. And they
Mhm.
might do things that are incongruent and mess up that sort of canon and
Yep.
that lore and that tone that you really want for this place, right? And
Yeah.
that can be dangerous and upsetting for everyone because like say you want to play a really silly character and my world is super intense,
Yeah.
then anytime you're doing things, I'm going to be pissed off about it.
Yeah.
Um, or vice versa. If you're trying to do silly things and they're not working and no one's taking you serious, or especially the DM is not taking you serious,
Yeah.
then it becomes like, are you really even having fun at that point?
Exactly.
So I think a thing for me was like, I definitely had a little bit of that the first time I tried to run D&D and I like fleshed out this world with this pantheon and
Yeah.
all these, factions and cultures and rules that apply. And, if you're from here, you can't really go here. And I still like having all those rules and stuff. Like, if you go there, it might be a little bit more hectic for you than, if you were a different type of dwarf or whatever the case is.
Yeah.
Um, but I think I love to give players room to like, yeah, bring what you want to this world. Like if you got an idea for a culture where your people came from, hit me with it, and we'll find a way to plug that in here and make it work. And so then it feels like we all sort of own a part of this story type of
Yeah.
thing. And with your character, it was super cool because it was like, no, I like that thing you made, but I'm going this way with it. And I
Yeah,
was like, yeah, absolutely.
I'm like,
Fucking,
I want to feel like I'm in your world, but I want to put a twist on my character.
yeah,
And
be the odd man out.
right, yeah, and I think that was awesome because that first session we had, it let me like learn about your world, and it kind of let me put the pieces together of like what I want to do with my characters. Like, where can I
Yeah.
take from Matt's world and keep it in line, but where can I put a twist on it or
Yeah.
change my character for that? And honestly, like, you've done great helping me. I'm so lucky that you are the person
Thanks, man.
that I have with this because you've made it very easy for me. But I'm so happy that like my characters worked out very well so far. And even the mini you made, like you colored for me.
Oh yeah.
God, so good. So good. My girlfriend's like, send me pictures. I want to have a picture of this and whatnot. And I was obsessing over it the entire time. I was like, look how good it looks. Look at the picture.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah. It's a really cool thing to like, again, like we were talking about earlier in the episode with collecting things, like
yeah.
to have something that you can have that's
Yeah.
yours and you made it like start
Yeah.
to finish is like one of the coolest things. I'm obsessed
Exactly.
with
It's
it.
literally like a little part of me, even though it's not like me. It's
Yeah.
something I did, and it's like a personality I did.
Yeah.
I love
It's a character you created
it.
in a
Exactly.
physical representation. And what's cooler than that?
It's my main character. Like I said
Yeah.
earlier, it's my main character.
So speaking about collecting, like we were a little bit earlier, does do you feel any sort of draw, just one session in so far, into the addiction that can be D&D? Like I know you see my setup and you see like
Yeah.
I got all these dice trays, I got all these sets of dice. Like after your first session, what was your level of interest in like, you know, where you're like, I should get my own dice set, I should like you make a custom one, or like where you at with that?
No, as soon as we sat down, I saw like the dice sets and like your table, man. And for people who don't know, Matt has a very impressive D&D table. I don't know if it's specifically for D&D, but that table is
Yeah.
sick. But yes, I would definitely want to get my own dice set up now. And I was thinking about like, man, how far would I go with this? Because I would love to do like run campaigns and do it more and try it out. But
Yeah.
I'm still very early on, right? So I don't want to get too ahead of myself or overwhelm myself. I definitely want to do this campaign, and just based off that first session, I'm like, man, I wouldn't mind doing this in the future.
Yeah. Yeah. I love
I
that.
would love to do that. I am thoroughly impressed with all the work you've done, set up even your like your boards you made for like background pieces, and like the even when we were in the sewers in our campaign, yeah, like, these nice little like stone walls and whatnot. And
Yeah.
that's like impressive on its own. I wish I could do that stuff. I do not have the hand to do that stuff. I cannot physically design or paint well, so I'm terrible.
Well, I couldn't either, man.
Hey,
Until I got that fit action figure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For me, mostly I do all my stuff like online. Even my like career is online, like all on my computer. So if it came down to like making printed pieces and like having it printed out nicely, I would do that probably. But DMing too, just like seeing you DM is like, it's impressive to see how far you go into your world with your characters. That's something that I feel like I would personally struggle because I would get exactly what you said. I get very attached to my world, and I wouldn't want anyone to ruin it. And I know I'm a perfectionist when it comes to like building structure, basically.
Yeah.
That it would physically hurt me to watch someone tear it down. So I don't think I could ever go into territory. But I would love to play and like help build like the models and whatnot. That'd be so fun.
Oh yeah, man. If I could put you to work if I could use some help. But no, I think you bring up an interesting point, right? Like being too precious about the thing you've created. Like it's very difficult. And what's cool is when there's sort of like a 50-50 split between, you know, me as the DM and you guys as the players, because, you know, even with what Luca was doing, like a lot of those characters Luca was walking around town interacting with were just me having to improvise.
Yeah.
But it's because, you know, you set up the structure, like for example, or to be specific here, like the tieflings in this world are named based off of traits they have or characteristics.
Yeah.
So you know, if someone was sneaky, they might be called I think his name was Artois or something, like
Yeah.
French for sleight of hand or whatever the case was,
Yeah. Yeah.
or stealthy. And then there was a potion seller named Seller,
Yeah.
uh,
Seller.
a bartender named Stern, and those were all characters I had to come up with on the spot because Luca was like, I want to go to the guy I know who sells potions. And I was like, fuck. Okay, his name is Seller. And then it became one of those characters in that session that's like instantly memorable.
Yeah, exactly.
And like, you know, talking with Luca afterwards, being like, man, I just want to go back and talk to that guy, you know, because I just had to pick something like that came to me and it was like, okay, this guy's a weirdo.
Yeah. No,
But yeah, I think that's like the beauty of it, not like, you know, you set up these rules beforehand and it's like, okay, I can come up with something pretty easy because I know these people here are oppressed and they've made their own subculture within this city and this is their naming convention. Okay, go. You know, what would somebody turn out like in that system?
No, that was I think probably the most impressive part of our whole run was watching you jump from character to character. For me alone to like play my one character, I'm like, okay, what would I say here? But for you to be like, I'm this person too. Oh, no, leave me alone too. I don't know. It was so impressive watching you do like this.
Oh man,
spot improv.
I'm flattered.
That is, I could not ever attempt that. I would be like, I do this, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, even like Seller was hilarious, and like Luca's character was like you got that thing, you know the thing, and just like pushing non-existent thing between you two, and then somehow improv it into the world.
Yeah,
that was hilarious.
Now there's a potion of fire breathing just made from nowhere.
The random thing you had in the back, apparently. It was so funny watching those interactions, and yeah, like I said, impressive of you being able to jump between the characters.
Yeah, no, it's super fun doing that, especially like interacting off of your characters. Be like, hey, yo, if your guy's weird, you show up to this guy who's also weird, it would be like, hey, yeah, me and you vibe. And then one of the funniest moments for me in that session was when I started doing like a thick sort of West African accent because I was a very specific character from a specific place, and then Matt accidentally slips into that same accent from like his Russian accent, and everyone at the table was just like, yo, what? That's so awesome.
That was so good.
I was like, damn, I nailed that, I guess.
Yeah, seriously. No, I think like I said earlier, just like watching everyone kind of play their characters, it really helps me, at least as a new character coming in, to feel comfortable playing, because I could see the intimidation of being like, I have to pretend to be this character with people I've never really met before. And my character's like, I made a really weird character, so now I have to play this really fucking weird character with these people who never met me before. And then Matt just immediately jumping into his character, and like same thing, he'd be like watching up front, and then as soon as it comes to his character, he'd be like, yeah, blah blah blah, and like lean back again to this like very relaxed persona, like a big man talking. It was so funny, and then watching that made me be like, okay, this is way like chiller than I thought it was gonna be.
That's the thing too, is a lot of people, like when you talk about, you know, differentiating between character and player.
Yeah,
a lot of people think, oh, I got to do an accent or like a silly voice and stuff. But one of like Luca used to run a game, and one of like the most distinct characters for me was this god that he played. There was like, we had an orc in our party who had like a sort of like a relationship with like this orc god of war, who was like a very like neurotic sort of I want to say like sultry. The way Luca played him, he'd like lean over in his chair and always have like a glass of wine
I see.
or like a cigar or something.
That's so good.
He'd always be like, you know, bargaining with us and like with this like really dulcet tone type of thing. And it was funny because the god would only appear like in this one character's dreams. So it'd be like, okay, we camp for the night. And then Luca would be like, Tonru. You're like, you hear a voice in your head. There's always just like the switch in body language
That's
and
so
demeanor is
good.
just so like classic to me that I'll never forget that character.
And
Uh
Luke is hilarious too, because like in our current campaign, he doesn't really have too much of a voice change, but he goes from like standing straightforward to kind of like inspective.
yeah.
Why are you being like that? Well, and he just goes into like a almost more like I don't know, detective sounding version of
Yeah,
himself,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and that's his character. And I love it.
It's funny because all these body language things you're pointing out from the players are ones I didn't pick up on our first session. That's really funny.
Oh well, like for me, like I was just watching everyone,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
was
yeah.
seeing how everyone changed,
I
and
love that.
he would like she lean forward usually,
Yeah, yeah,
like seeing back and looking at his PC, and he'd be like, oh, and yeah, get into his
yeah.
accent and like get really chummy with everyone.
Yeah, that one I
His
do pick up
character.
on. Yeah.
It's so funny. No, I loved it watching everyone kind of slowly lean into their characters.
Oh man. Well, I'm so glad that even one session in, you're already like, I should DM. That's like that's the best, man.
I would love to do more. I definitely want to explore different campaigns before I get too into DMing myself, but I want to see the different worlds we can kind of mess with here, so I have an
Yeah.
idea I can make for myself.
Right. So I guess my last question for you here before we wrap up. So you had sort of a base understanding of it before you got into it.
Yeah.
And sort of things you knew, you sort of affirmed here, and then you learned a lot about it. But what would you say to people who, are not very familiar with it, or those people we talked about earlier who have sort of like a negative view of it? Like, what would your sort of, after you've experienced it for the one session, like what would you then say to those people who are, either on the fence or like very far this way, like, I don't want to play that, I'm not a nerd in the basement?
I'd say let Matt DM. I would say honestly go in there with a clear mind. People I feel like have the mindset of like, okay, this is gonna be some shit and whatever. Now I have to do this for however long. And it's like I went into it with a very like open to experience. And I feel like that worked out in my favor. And I feel like anyone who's never done it or is willing to try it should go in with an open mind. And if you have a negative opinion on it, you should first get a life, but also I don't know, watch people play it, I guess, before you give a negative opinion about it. Because I think if you can watch someone play the game and see how much fun they have with it, you can kind of open yourself to being like, oh, this is actually pretty fun to even watch from an outsider perspective. I can't imagine how much more fun it is to be inside.
Right.
So I think give it an actual watch to seeing how much people have fun. I think will definitely broaden your opinion on it.
Nice. I love that. Well, yeah, Joe, I think that'll wrap us up for today. Thanks so much for coming on the show, talking to me about collecting and D&D.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, for people out there, our show switching to a bi-weekly, very loose schedule basis. We're going to be posting as much as we can every other Thursday. And the Dune review for our 1 year anniversary is coming. That'll be hopefully the next thing you see from us. Joe, where can people find you if they want to talk about D&D or collecting or whatever the case is?
Don't make me say my Twitter handle again. You can find me at control-alt-yen, control.alt.yen on Instagram if you want to follow me on Instagram. I have a Twitter. It's not very active. I'm going to refrain from saying it this time because it's not worth it.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, Instagram if you want to find me, and hopefully soon I'll be doing more stuff, and we'll see.
Awesome. Yeah, and people follow this channel, obviously subscribe and like these videos. Let us know your thoughts on collecting and playing D&D for the first time if you've had the opportunity to do so, and follow me on Instagram, keep_making, and check out my YouTube channel, Keep Making. We'll put some links in the description below. As always, I'm Matt.
I'm Joe.
And we are the Lords of Lore.